I am a big fan of everything that Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah ever writes. In fact, I've mentioned this before, the first story in his collection Friday Black, The Finkelstein Five, is my favourite short story of all time. He's incredible, and Friday Black is a collection you need to check out if you haven't already. After becoming enamored with his writing through Friday Black, I was very excited to see what kind of a debut novel he would come out with, and Chain Gang All-Stars did not disappoint. This is exactly the kind of thing I had hoped that someone of Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah's gift would write. This novel is to the American prison system what Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale is to women's bodies. Throughout the last 100 years of literary fiction, authors with specific political and social motivations have written dystopian or pseudo-dystopian books on specific elements of Western politics. 1984, Fahrenheit 451, the aforementioned The Handmaid's Tale, Brave New World. I could go on and on and on and on. Chain Gang All-Stars joins that group of novels, and it's the only one I've ever seen that tackles the American prison system, and specifically from a more black American angle as well. It's no secret that the American prison system is corrupted and that it is in fact a capitalist industry. And Chain Gang All-Stars explores that in a very honest, raw, uncomfortable, and painful way. Chain Gang All-Stars is set possibly slightly in our future or in an alternate version of now, where the American prison system has something akin to a gladiator games. A televised show that is very popular, where inmates are pitted against each other in tournaments. They have weapons and they fight to the death. It's a gladiator arena. The novel predominantly follows two black American women who are both in this system. And these gladiator games are things that prisoners opt into. They have to last 3 years fighting in this arena. And if they do so and they go up through the ranks, and there are specific ranks with different names, they can eventually be freed. But there is high freedom and low freedom. High freedom means that you are released from your sentence. However long it was supposed to be, it's reduced to 3 years, you get through the tournaments, you kill many other inmates to get there, and you are now free. Low freed simply means you died trying. You were freed in a fashion. Our protagonists, as I said, are two black women who also happen to be in love. There's Loretta Thurwar, and a woman who goes by the stage name Hurricane Stax. The novel actually begins with a kind of prologue where Thurwar has been thrust into her first match, and it's against a woman who is about to be free. Thurwar is her final match, and it's obviously not fair, so this is a walk in the park for a woman who has spent 3 years to get to this point, and all she has to do is kill a newbie. She puts on a show, and she allows Thurwar to kill her because she doesn't want to get out. She doesn't want to go out there into the world. Not after what she's seen, not after what she's done. It's kind of like she's been institutionalized, but also she's become numbed and disenfranchised and hollowed out by everything she's had to do to get here. So Thurwar kills her, and that's the start of her journey. Then we jump ahead a few years and the story begins properly. Thurwar has become an absolute legend on the circuit. She's part of a chain that includes her lover, Hurricane Stax, and the two of them have fans all around the country who tune in all the time to watch them fight. These fights are televised to homes all around the US, and people come and buy tickets to go see it. The idea of turning the prison system into a gladiator games seems so strikingly obvious to me that I'm absolutely amazed it's never been done before. At least I've never seen it done before. I've never seen an author tackle this kind of a thing. And through this story, Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah is able to do so many powerful things. One thing that he does that's extremely daring, and he talks about it in an essay at the back of this book, is the choice to include footnotes. All the way through the novel, there are footnotes. And as far as I can tell, some of them are fictional about the world of the novel, and the majority of them are non-fiction. They are facts and details about the prison system, numbers, statistics, all of them bleak and depressing. The fictional footnotes come in whenever a new character is either introduced or killed, and the footnote is like their headstone. It gives a little background detail into who they are or were. The non-fiction footnotes are facts and details about the prison system. Some of these footnotes are dedications to real people who died in an unjust and unjustifiable way. By the police, by the prison system, by the justice system. Others, as I said, are facts. A grim example of these facts is this one. It has been found that police officers' families suffer from domestic abuse at a higher rate than non-police officers' families. The Domestic Violence Offender Gun Ban Law passed in 1996, and it required that those convicted of a domestic violence misdemeanor be prohibited from purchasing guns, and yet this ban does not exempt police officers or members of the military. So in the US, cops are statistically far more likely to abuse their families, and yet they are obviously exempt from the law that is supposed to further protect the victims of domestic abuse or potential domestic abuse. And then there's this one. Trans Americans are more than twice as likely to be incarcerated as cisgender Americans. More than twice. And trans people of colour are more likely to be incarcerated than white trans people. The vulnerable are targeted again, always. Revealing that statistically, the most vulnerable group in existence in the USA are black trans women. These footnotes are necessary. They were a bold choice to make because they draw you out of the narrative, and the narrative is incredibly engrossing and Moorish, but they do some real good. And Nana Kwame actually mentions at the back in his essay that he was inspired to create these footnotes and include them, even against his own instincts, by playing Metroid Prime because of the scan mechanic in that game that allows you to scan things and get details about the world. And I thought that was absolutely brilliant as someone who loves Metroid Prime. I should say that this isn't a perfect novel, however. It has some weird issues when it comes to pacing and structure. There are characters that get introduced quite late on, over the halfway point, and their narratives end up crossing over with the main story, but often they feel like they don't go anywhere or don't go far enough, or their introduction didn't mean anything. There are characters whose stories just very suddenly and abruptly end, and you can argue that thematically that's the point. But there are so many cases where I wanted a little bit more out of background characters, side characters, or even minor protagonists who are briefly introduced. The book builds and builds and builds to a crescendo, but a lot of that building kind of feels like false starts. So I would say there are structural issues with the book, where it either needed to be longer and things needed to be padded out a little bit more and explored more deeply, or shorter and certain things be cut out completely. It kind of sits in that middle ground where there are things introduced that just aren't explored deeply enough. But this is also a very undeniably exciting narrative. It is full of very exciting action, gore, blood, combat scenes. The first few chapters are just fights, really, really engaging and viscerally detailed fights. And you get more fights as the book goes on because it's about a group of gladiators. So even on a surface level, this is an incredibly fun novel because it's visceral and bloody. And you feel guilty for enjoying that fun because of the themes of the book, because what it's teaching us. But Adjei-Brenyah still wrote it to be fun and engaging. These action scenes are fluid and beautifully written and full of very satisfying gore. And all of that just makes you feel more guilty for liking it, or at least being entertained by it. It's a smart move to entertain an audience while simultaneously reminding them that they shouldn't be enjoying it. But ultimately, this is a bleak novel with a very poignant and important message about the fact that, as I said, the American prison system is an industry. It is unfair, it is unjust, it is racist, it is homophobic and transphobic. This is a book that exposes the farcical nature of the American carceral system, the justice system, and the police. How all of these things simply work together to maintain a racial imbalance within the social dynamics of the United States. And not just the social dynamics, but the political and economic dynamics as well. This is a book that makes explicitly clear that racism has never gone away for even a second in the US, and progress arguably has barely been made, at least in the last few decades. The systems in place when it comes to policing and justice exist to further disenfranchise the already disenfranchised. It's just brutal truth after brutal truth. And I guess I should make my biases and my opinions clear just for the sake of transparency. I am a prison abolitionist and I am a police abolitionist. And so of course this book already spoke to me, everything I know to be true, everything I believe, everything I've observed. Therefore, I would argue that it's more important for people who don't believe these things to read this novel. This is a powerful book by an American black writer of incredible talent who's done his research and written something incredible. A book that, as I've already said, will stand shoulder to shoulder with books like 1984, The Handmaid's Tale, and Fahrenheit 451, a fantastic piece of dystopian literary fiction that you need to read. It's not without its faults, but those faults are minor in the face of a fantastic narrative and very, very powerful, important political themes. So check out Chain Gang All Stars and subscribe for books.